This podcast is brought to you by the Islamic Center and NYU. For more information, visit our website at www.icnyu.org.
Perspective and the ability to shift paradigms inwardly. There's going to be a need to adapt. That's just a part of our faith intrinsically, right? So we have narrations in our tradition that tell us that the state of the believer is such that it changes 40 times in a day. And the one that has no belief is the same for 40 years in a row. And the idea is that you're going to have continuity in certain parts of your life, but there's going to also be certain parts of your life that are in flux, and you're going to have to learn how to adapt to new circumstances. The ability now, though, to be able to cast perspective is going to be of a priority in that. Because there's a distinction in being able to say that I'm not doing enough versus I can do more, right? Do you see the nuanced difference that's there? Because one is rooted now in a prism that has a negative frame to it. There's inadequacy. There's deficiency. There's an absence of satisfaction that comes into play. And one of the basic parts of Ramadan that we hear again and again and again is rooted now in a standpoint of awareness, consciousness. But it's not about just being able to think, because everybody thinks, right? Like right now, all of you are thinking about something. That's not the achievement. The ability to harness control over what you think about, as well as how you think about the things that you're thinking about, is what is a fundamental aspect of taqwa. The opportunity to now control those thoughts and not be in submission to those thoughts. And perspective there is an inward choice that you can see something the way somebody else sees it, but see it totally different. And you want to drill within yourself, not something that's now conflicting thoughts, but to start to think about, why do I see it the way that I see it? Why do I see it now that's pitting parts of my life against each other? Why do I have to see it as an either or? Why can't I see it as a both and? Or do I see it in a limited capacity as opposed to something that I'm working towards, right? Like Noor said, you don't need to set the standard unreasonably. You're going to be a nurse, right? Inshallah. I think Noor would be a great nurse. Let's hope so. She's terrible. It's going to suck for a lot of people. In order for her to achieve something that's going to be a means through which she can assist people in that type of institutional setting, she has to now go through the process to get to that point. And the ability to think that this is something that is necessary, but also temporary, that allows for me in this phase to be able to acquire something and utilize my time in a way that can still be ibadah. Because the acquisition of my revenue generation, my wealth, my job title, my credential, my degree, my skills, all of those things now inwardly can become something that enhance the growth of my celestial self, my inward state, depending on what it is that I'm bringing of it inwardly of motivation and intention. Or it can also be something that I start to build resentment towards. And why do I have to go to these places? It's becoming now an obstacle in my growth. Do you get what I mean? Like some of you were here on Saturday, and my son Kareem was here, my daughter Medina was here. My son Kareem is now 6, and my daughter is 9. And they're amazing, mashallah, great blessings in my life. Make dua for them. My daughter, she is starting to fast like the whole month of Ramadan. And she's going through it like a champion, mashallah. My son Kareem wants to be like his big sister. And he also kind of talks a lot like his dad does. And he's constantly telling me about what his plan is and how he might take a sip of water here or there. Or, maybe he'll just have 2 fasts in a day. I'm like, do what you can, man. My son Kareem was born, and he got older. He's very different from his sister, Medina. And Kareem wakes up anytime between 5, 6 in the morning, and he just automatically runs into our room. We're praying Fajr now with a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old. He's now 6. And constantly from the time he was a child, he's just a ball of energy, like jumping, even if he's standing in a spot, just going up and down like this the whole time. And when we would pray Fajr time in our apartment, especially in the pandemic, there's nowhere else to go. This kid is standing next to me. He's poking me in my stomach. He's slapping me in my butt. It's not the easiest thing to focus in your prayer when somebody is literally punching you during the course of it. And now at the end of it, when I'm done praying, what is my choice in that matter? Am I going to look at this blessing that is my child and say to him, you ruined my prayer? Am I going to choose to adopt a perspective? Is the paradigm that I'm going to engage in to now unleash all kinds of agitation on my son? Or am I going to say, what a blessing that I have a kid that is standing next to me side by side in prayer? And now I start to shift as to how my routine as a father, which is new, I'm getting acclimated to, and learning how to bring other moments of stillness into the rest of my day. Because that period in the morning time, I can focus on how it's not what it was, or I can understand what it actually is now and what it will become for me going forward. And how do I now see other times in my routine that might not be daily, but still can be things that I interject with deliberate presence so that I'm now not building that sense of bitterness within me. Do you get what I'm saying? And it's important to understand because you don't want to adopt a certain sense of zeal that now translates into an anxiety that has you defeat what you can do in a sense of what's not possible, what's not within my control at this moment. And I'm constantly longing for what's not there. And it creates for me now a challenge of being able to see what's actually in front of me. I think you can draw a lot from the Adamic story of creation, right? Adam alayhi salam, he is created. We talked about it a little bit last night, but to draw from it lessons and meanings that are not just kind of stories that we rotely memorize, but to understand from it. One of the parts of the story of Adam, peace be upon him, involves a tree that's called the Shajaratul Khuld, right? The tree of eternality. So one thing that he's told not to engage in is the engagement of eating from this tree. And Jannah is called Jannah. It's got the same root in Arabic as the word jinn, right? And jinn is like a hidden being. And so Jannah is called Jannah because in some narrations, there's so many trees in Jannah that if you were to stand at the base of the trees and look up, nothing could be seen because of the sheer amount of foliage. Or if you were looking from above, because of so much in terms of greenery, there's so many trees looking down from on top of them, you'd also see nothing. It's hidden. And they're told now, just don't engage in this one thing. But for the purposes of this conversation, that tree of eternality, the Shajaratul Khuld, it's giving him something that he's tempted towards that he already has in the first place. Do you get what I mean? And what shaitan gets us a lot to do, what our nafs gets us a lot to do, is chase after things that we already have. And then it becomes this laboring process that leaves you in a state of just angst and exhaustion because I'm running everywhere to try to find something that's already there in front of me. And what Ramadan is about is lifting veils so you can see it for what's actual and not just see it through that prism of emotional angst. To start to remove now what is dissatisfying because consumption doesn't render satisfaction. Our spiritual system posits that you want to be a contributor, not simply a consumer. And you want to be in a place where you don't buy into a consumer-driven understanding of what renders happiness and what renders meaning. But the state of the believer is unique, the hadith says. You see things differently from others. You're able to understand and find meaning and beauty in whatever is there ahead of you. And to allow for yourself now to have basira, a vision of the heart, so that it's not a limited capacity through which we see things, but we're seeing it for what it actually is, and not just what we long for it to be. Do you get what I mean? What do I mean? You're nodding your head. The pedagogy that exists in many of our traditional communities, that's a front-facing lecture, is not going to enable us to gain from the breadth. And you won't learn also, because a lot of the pedagogies you've engaged in are not systems where it's just lecture, but you discuss, you talk, you hear from one another. Yeah, and that perspective is critical, right? My two kids wanted ice cream. There is a place giving ice cream on the street. My one kid, I don't want to stand in the line. The other kid, we're standing in that line to get ice cream. At the end of it, one of my kids had ice cream. I had ice cream. The other kid did not have ice cream. And they said to me, "Can I have some of your ice cream?" And I said, "No, it's my ice cream. It's not your ice cream." All they saw was the line. And that was enough for them to take on nothing. The other one saw it differently. And he saw the ice cream. And then the line wasn't a burden, it was a means to something. Do you get what I mean? And then I gave my kid my ice cream. I'm not like a grimy human being. But to understand, that's now not a cause that is outward. It's an inward mechanism. How you see it is not telling you just about what you see, but how you see it is telling you a lot about yourself. And that's not just about outward individuals or experiences, but you can apply it back to you. Because how you see yourself isn't necessarily indicative of who you are, but you see it also now through those prisms of some of these things. There's 4 types of thoughts you can have within our spiritual tradition. You can have thoughts that are Rabbani thoughts, thoughts that are coming to you from divine sources. Thoughts that are going to encourage you towards things that are just unambiguously good. You have thoughts that are malakani thoughts, angelic thoughts, that are also good, but at a lesser degree of it. Those are the kind of thoughts that are going to say to you, let somebody else, the elders, get food first. Everybody was fasting, including the person who's 60 or 70 or older than me. The malakani thought is going to be the one that's going to say that, let me say salam to somebody else. The hadith says, the best of you are the ones who greet those that they know and those that they do not know. The malakani thought is going to compel you to do things that are good. You then have a third prism of thought that's a nafsani thought. These are thoughts that come from the lower self. They're the ones that are going to tell you, you don't really need to pray your recommended prayers. It's not a big deal if you don't smile at people when you greet at them. Somebody else is going to serve the food. You just be served. And don't think about it self-deprecatingly. Think about it objectively to understand and categorize the thoughts. The nafs is lazy by its nature. It doesn't want you to be generous. It doesn't want you to be forgiving. And then you have a 4th prism of thought, which is the shaitani thoughts. They're just going to tell you to do haram. May Allah protect us from those. The advantage now within the prism of Ramadan, where it says sufidat shayateen, that the shayateen, they're chained, is it's just you with your nafsani thoughts. You can have remnants of things that existed prior to. But as you start to get into the midst of Ramadan, consumption goes less, and there's a direct relation now between consumption going down and an elevation of your own capacity to be present. You can now choose to start to think about why you think about what you're thinking about. And why do I see it in the way that I see it? But that has to be something that you deliberately build into your routine, so that you're able to now be in a space where you find that meaning, that beauty. The Maulana Rumi, rahimahullah, the Muslim poet Rumi, He says that your goal is not to go and find beauty, to find love. Your goal is to simply find everything that you've built within yourself against it, to keep you from seeing it. And the idea with this is that you are now taking on those things and you start to process it. The nafs is going to not want you to give up on certain things. So it's going to have you compare to other people's realities, to be in a space that says, this is terrible, that I have to now engage in this. All I want to do is read this book. I want to pray. I want to do these things. You're going to get to do certain things with your life trajectory that other people might not be able to do because of what it is that your 9 to 5 looks like on a routine. And you start to now see yourself bigger than just a moment. And you plan now for weeks, days, months. If you have a taste of something that you want to experience from this last weekend that during the course of the week you're not able to do, bring it to a place where you are strategically saying, what is my next Friday night to Sunday night going to look like? And I'm going to choose to be very actively present in the midst of planning what an entire month might be, so that if I'm going through it now in a place of struggle, real mujahada, because it's easy. My job is to be Muslim, right? May Allah make it easy for me. But to understand that where my office is, there's wudu rooms down the hall, a prayer room down the hall. I literally am part of a center where I get to just pray and fast and do whatever. Alhamdulillah, there's some like headaches that come along with it also. But to be able to understand and reflect on what it is that your routine privileges for you to also have and create an opportunity to adapt in certain ways, it's an inward process. You cannot compare your day to my day. And the nafs is going to get you to do that. It's going to hate on you and tell you, look at that guy. Look at what he's able to do. Ours is not a deen that teaches us to be in competition with others. You don't want to take what supremacy imposes upon you and has you now in this space of conflict always. That's rooted in an absence of satisfaction, that something else is always where I need to be. No, man, you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. You are in the spot that Allah intended for you to be in, and you want to be there with an open heart and an open mind. And to start to process things now, not just with an outward vision of what's most apparent, but to start to understand that there's a duality of vision in our tradition that is about seeing outwardly and inwardly and letting the inward part of your vision be what helps you to see inwardly and outwardly. We have a creature in our tradition that is called Dajjal. Do people know about Dajjal? Who is Dajjal? Who's Dajjal?
It's like, I guess, like Antichrist, or like kind of on that.
It's the Antichrist. What do we know about Dajjal? Any descriptions, depictions? Dajjal is one-eyed. Anything else?
Something with Jinn,
Yeah. What did you say?
Jinn and some island.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into the depictions. We have apocalyptic and eschatological narrations in our tradition. End of times narrations, right? And within these end of time narrations, we have this character who is said to be a great fitna. May Allah protect us from it. And the Dajjal is described as being one-eyed. And that's like in a literal sense. He's got one eye. In a more esoteric sense, we juxtapose this to Quran, right? Surah Al-Balad says, وَهَدَيْنَا أَلَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُ عَيْنَيْن, that did we not make you with two eyes? And the Dajjal being one-eyed, we can understand in a literal sense, but in a more esoteric sense, the understanding is that it's an eschatological apocalyptic hadith. It's coming towards the end of time. So the idea is that in the prism of modernity, as we get closer to the end of time, we are going to become more one-eyed, meaning that we will lose depth of perspective. You will only be able to see outwardly or inwardly, as opposed to seeing in both directions. What Ramadan is about, one of the many things, is regaining the ability to see with depth, to not just see it simplistically. So you as a Muslim are not supposed to just see people based off of one variable of their identity, their skin color, their race. You don't erase people's identity, but you don't buy into stereotypes. You don't see somebody only by how they dress or how they don't dress. You don't see them in simplistic fashions, but the aspiration is to be able to see at a deeper level, to be able to see what is inherently beautiful in somebody else. If for no other reason, it'll help you to see what is inherently beautiful within you and how you can recognize light and luminosity around you. Because you don't want to be the person who, when they see somebody, all you see is inadequacy. What a miserable existence that would be. Can you imagine if when you interacted with people, the only takeaway you had was to speak poorly about them? That you sat in circles with people and all you did was to speak about what their perceived flaws were? That you distance yourselves from others because all you did was look at them and say, here's a reason as to why they are beneath me? That's not what our teacher, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was about. And the people that he dealt with, they had a lot of challenges. And the society he lived in, it had a lot of stratification to it. The social hierarchies that were in place validated mistreatment across the board. But for this conversation, it's imperative to understand the starting point is not outward. The starting point is inward. And you build into your routine what it is that you have capacity to do. Self-talk is going to be very critical in this. And it's easy when you get tired and hungry to say things through a prism of irritation. And everybody doesn't fast. Everybody doesn't have the capacity to fast. But if you are fasting and you are staying up late at night in prayer and your sleep is all messed up and physiologically you're just getting used to it, you're going to get snappy at people, right? My 9-year-old, she fasted yesterday, mashallah, woke up for suhoor, had suhoor with some of you in our building. She got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. My son, Kareem, he said, wake me up too. I waked him up. He then said, I just need a stretch, Bubba. And so I left him to stretch. I came back, he was knocked out again. And then I woke him up again and he said, okay, I'm coming. And then he got out of bed. He got to the door of his bedroom. He looked into the light of the hallway. He said, no, I'm not going to do it. And then he just ran back to his bed. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, man, I can't go to sleep anymore, Bubba. So he came downstairs and he ate some waffles with people. My daughter woke up at 4 also. And Kareem went back to sleep after he ate like a bunch of things. Medina stayed up. She prayed Fajr with us and then probably went back to sleep at 6. Woke up again a couple of hours later. Went through a whole day's worth of stuff on Sunday. And then at around 6, 7 o'clock, you could tell she was getting a little snippy. And my baby girl, mashallah, is a beautiful human being, inside and out. And I said something to her, and she said something back to me. And I said, who do you think you are talking to? And I said, that's not who you are. But she's getting used to the fast. And she's seeing her boundaries. That's not the moment to make a decision on what life means to you. When you're getting used to just the pangs of hunger, where you can start to just feel the thirst on your throat and your lips, is going to now assume control. And in that moment of perspective, you are now going to decide, what does this mean to me? And you're going to decide it through hunger and through angst. That's not when you make a decision. You give yourself some time to be able to get reacclimated to a state of homeostasis, stability, and then you make a decision on what should my routine look like? What should my schedule look like? Because you don't want to then err in the other way. that says everything is lacking Monday through Friday. So I'm going to have no semblance of who I am Saturday and Sunday. And then I'm just going to pour myself into a place where I can't even get through the rest of my routine. And all it's going to do is deepen the bitterness, deepen the animosity, because you're going to blame things for the exhaustion when in reality it's just poor planning at the end of the day. And not just about writing things down on a sheet of paper, but what's the state of mind I'm in when I'm deciding and choosing what my routine is going to look like. Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense? The management of the self is the goal of our spiritual tradition. And time management is essentially self-management. If you want to build into your routine right now things that will help to enhance your routine day to day, one, start to just go back to the basics. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but of the days that you have fasted, think within yourself, how many of you have missed suhoor? If you're missing suhoor, you're missing out on barakah. That's just what the hadith says. There's a hadith where a companion comes to the Prophet. They're going to have suhoor together. And the Prophet says to him, come, let's go to the blessed meal. In other narrations, he tells us, even if it's just a sip of water, there's barakah in it. There's blessing in it. You can't control whether you got to sit in an office or a classroom or these things. You can control if you're getting up to have that barakah. And it's going to be transformative in the rest of your routine. You get to control at the end of the night, when the room is packed with people having iftar, if you're going to go and make some bad choices, and after a meal here, you're going to go have 3 more meals. And then you're going to get out of it what you put into it. But you start to self-regulate, you start to bring presence, and you say that the day ahead of me is not just what is there. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. May Allah make the best of our deeds the last of our deeds. But there's a reality that says that I don't know what's going to happen. Reflections on mortality are not meant to be morbid reflections in our tradition. Supremacy as a system creates now a mindset that has one pretend like mortality is not there. We had an alum of our university whose husband, hours before Ramadan began, passed away from a stroke. May Allah grant him peace and entrance into Jannah without any judgment. In his 30s, 2 kids, wife is expecting. He didn't make it to Ramadan. That's where the dua is there. Allahumma balighna Ramadan. It's a reality. The plan that you have is in what you have control of. The ajr comes from the intention. So if the day is hard on a weekday, what's keeping you from planning for the weekend or at other moments is going to be within yourself. You don't want that negative prism, that negative frame to be what's defining and deciding. Because the minute it starts building itself as self-talk, you're going to start missing out on the opportunities of what's ahead of you. All right, look at where you're seated, subhanAllah, with good people. Look at the view that you have. You're literally like on top of everything. You are in a space, subhanAllah, where not one of us in this room has to be worried about the fact as to whether we will have something to eat at sunset or not. That places you ahead of many people in the world, not self-deprecation, just as a reality. What do you really have to complain about? And there's going to be certain things that are tough. Let the things that are worth being complained about be what you complain about. And the other things that are not meant to be complained about, don't give them life through the nafs. Allow for yourself to take what is there that is good and find meaning through that. And you're going to see transformation in the rest of this month of Ramadan. Does this make sense? You got to go easy on yourself. It's not. In a society that is structured for other than our observations to be present, the routine is not built off of ease in that sense. But that's where Allah is going to reward you for the struggle. And every step you get up and you're still doing it despite how hard it might be, that's going to give you insight into what your capacity actually is. You see what I mean? So what I want us to do just as we close, there's in our tradition a lot that goes into making dua at the time of fasting when you break your fast. So I wanted to ask you all to join me in making a dua as we break our fast, inshallah, and to just recenter yourself to the space. If you want to come in a little bit closer, because people are going to be coming in just as we go and get closer to Maghrib time. And so we're not having people pile out through the doors. The room is pretty big, alhamdulillah. If you want to recenter yourself to the space, inshallah, and allow for yourself to be present in it, as we make dua to Allah at this Mubarak time, we pray that He accepts our prayer and grants us even better than what it is that we are asking of. And just as we're making dua, our volunteers are going to be passing out dates to you. So if somebody comes and taps you on the shoulder with a date, just take it. When we call the adhan, you can break your fast, inshallah. اللهم آمين اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لوجهك وعظيم سلطانك لك الحمد حمدا طاهرا طيبا مباركا فيه إلى يوم الدين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين Ya Allah, Ya Alim, knower of all things, you who has known each of us before we even knew ourselves, help us through this month of Ramadan to know ourselves better. Help us through this blessed month to know our strengths and to live by them, to know our character and how to increase it, to know our pains and how to heal them, to know our value and how to share it, to know our blessings and how to be grateful for them, to know our wants and to see where they conflict with our needs, to know our shortcomings and how to confront and defeat them, to know how to really forgive all those who have wronged us and to actually forgive them, to know how to seek forgiveness from those that we have wronged and to then go out and seek it, to know what charity is by being generous with our wealth and our time, to know what integrity is by being honest and truthful, and to know what goodness is by extending our hands without qualification to all those who are in need. Help us through this blessed month to know who it is that we are and not let the people we are today be afraid any longer to meet the people we can be tomorrow. And through it, Ya Allah, help us to know you and your mercy, to know you and your love. Make us from amongst those who live with true contentment every day of our lives and grant us an abode in the place of ultimate contentment in the world beyond this one. Allow for our beings to be filled with self-love that we can go out and share with others, rather than a love of ourselves that keeps us from being everything that we are able to be. When our hearts are heavy and we are filled with darkness, bring people to us who illuminate us through kindness, compassion, and love. Make us always the reason that people have hope in this world and never the reason that people might dread it. Help us to know the realities of those that are around us by overcoming whatever it is that exists within us that keeps us away from one another. Through this month of Ramadan, perfect us inwardly so that we are victorious in the battle that is taking place every day for control of our hearts. Give us victory over selfishness and remove from within us any feeling of arrogance and racism. Increase us in brotherhood and sisterhood so that we might together take on every challenge that we face and together celebrate every success and achievement. Give us hearts that feel anger whenever any one of us are abused and the confidence and compassion needed to build for them what they are in need of. Give us hearts that feel sadness when any one of us loses a loved one and the gentleness and mercy needed to be there for them fully. Give us hearts that feel joy whenever any one of us succeeds and the love and hope needed to celebrate that achievement. Give us hearts that are not lost in the pursuit of this world, but hearts that are bold enough to be drawn to the world beyond this one. Make us those who use our strength, our power, our sheer will and determination to break down the walls of inequity, injustice, and oppression that confine so many today. Help us to truly be those who come together on principles of truth, patience, and mercy, so that we can, as a community, do for others what we have the ability to do. Inspire this community, Ya Allah, to build the shelters and clinics that our neighbors are in need of. Inspire us, this community, Ya Allah, to take in the orphans and children that the world has forgotten. Inspire us to be generous and honest, people of integrity and sound character. Inspire us to live our Islam in such a way that it brings benefit to all those who are around us. Send us reminders always of what true contentment really is, and let us never be those who sacrifice the fulfillment of our needs by chasing after the complacent desires of our wants. Help us to see this world always through hearts that have benefited from Ramadan, to see the goodness in all those who are around us, and to never be those who elevate ourselves by denigrating others, to see the benefit in any challenge that comes our way, and to not pass on a gift that can only be acquired through patience and perseverance. Help us to silence fear and abolish anxiety, to overpower indifference and break away from greed, to eliminate arrogance and defeat racism, to be bold enough to ask of you to make us those who only do that which is good. Make us those who find real peace and real love, and not just the semblance of it. Those who give real peace and real love, and not just the facade of it. Make our motivation always selflessness, not selfishness, sincerity, and never self-centeredness. Give us the courage to express gratitude and appreciation, to seek forgiveness from those that we have wronged, to let those that we love know that we love them, and never let them believe that they are not loved. Give us the strength to stand again after we have fallen, to understand that we will make mistakes. Grant us the wisdom to learn from our failings and the humility to truly gain from each success. For any pain and torment that we might have faced, through it, give us ease, understanding, and facility. For any suffering that we have sustained, bring to us understanding and strength of healing. Grant us always a life that is filled with a wellness of our minds, our bodies, our spirits, and our hearts. Make this month of Ramadan a month of rejuvenation for us, a month of renewal for us, a month of replenishment. It is not our stomachs that are hungry, nor our throats that are thirsty, but our hearts are parched and long to be revitalized. Grant us both in and through the coming weeks a much needed peace that we long for, even if we don't realize it. And throughout this month, help us to make decisions through our hearts and never at their expense. Put into our hearts a desire for nothing less but to take from this Ramadan all that it is that we can. Remove from our hearts anything that distracts us from it. Make us those who seek out, witness, and benefit from Laylatul Qadr. And in our standing in the nights, help us to remember all those who are forgotten, whether by us alone or the world around us. Give us the energy to stand into the night and the sincerity to make dua for all who are special to us. Through this Ramadan, increase us in our Islam. Through this Ramadan, increase us in our Iman. Through this Ramadan, increase us in our Ihsan. Make the Quran our guide and grant us a deep understanding of it. Make the Sunnah our goal, both inward and outward aspects of it. And make our prayer our anchor, granting us the true sweetness that salah and dua only can. Make the best of our deeds the last of our deeds. And let not any one of us leave this world other than in a state that is most pleasing to you. Ya Allah, bless us in this month of Ramadan and help us to gain from it. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
If you would like to listen to more, please donate to www.icnyu.org/donate. For more of our virtual programs, go to www.icnyu.org/classes. If you have any questions, email us at info@icnyu.org.